Hello, Year 11s. So in this video today, we're going to be talking about the endocrine system. So the dot point that we're looking at, taken directly from the study design, is the specialization and organization of animal cells into tissues, organs and systems with specific functions. And obviously we're focusing in here on the endocrine system, although we will cover the digestive and the excretory system a little bit later on. Now, the endocrine system, when you see that written down, I'd like you to immediately think glands and hormones, okay? So when you see the endocrine system written down, glands and hormones. Now, what the endocrine system does is it helps to communicate messages to cells in your body. So we have two ways that we can send messages. One is through our nervous system, which is our brain and our neurons, and that sends electrochemical messages. The other is this system here, the endocrine system, which delivers only chemical messages, which we call hormones. Hormones are secreted into the bloodstream, so that means they're sort of pushed out or they're released by these structures called glands, which we'll talk about briefly. And one of the key differences between the electrochemical message that we might get from the nervous system or from our brain versus the hormonal message, the chemical message from a hormone, is that the messages from hormones are they're slow to act, and the effect that they have is widespread, so it can affect lots of different cells or tissues in the body, and typically those effects will last a bit of a longer time than the effects of a message from the brain. So for example, if I were to snap my finger, that message came straight away, the effects, I snap my finger and then the effect is over, right? But if we were to release a hormone called adrenaline, which I'm sure you've all heard of before, you can think of it when you're playing sport or the fight or flight response. The effects of adrenaline are things like it'll dilate your blood vessels so you can get more blood to your brain. It'll cause your cells to release more glucose into your blood, glucose that's being stored up, so you can use that energy to achieve whatever function. Your heart rate speeds up, your lungs speed up. So if you sort of think about those effects, they're widespread, and they will last a lot longer than, for example, me just snapping my finger. Now, talking about hormones, I think probably for a lot of you, when I say the word hormone, I'm assuming you might immediately start thinking about times that you might have said, oh, your friend's being a little bit hormonal today, or someone's acting up, or they're going through puberty, so they have a ton of hormones, or maybe they've got a lot of spots because of all their hormones, things like that. And I guess in general conversation, we tend to talk about sex hormones quite a bit, which are responsible for all of those things that I just mentioned. But hormones actually control and regulate lots and lots of functions in the body. So there are the reproductive hormones, but they also regulate metabolism, so how much energy you're using at any given time, your growth, your development, your help in your immune system with your body's defenses. So hormones have tons and tons of functions apart from just the reproductive functions. So hormones are typically, they're made of proteins or amino acid derivatives. So they're made of structures of amino acids. And if they are proteins or made of amino acids, they're going to be hydrophilic. So if they're hydrophilic, they're not going to be able to cross the plasma membrane on the cells that they're trying to communicate the message to. So the hydrophilic ones will typically have receptors on the actual plasma membranes of their target cells. And hormones can also be steroids. And again, I think when I say the word steroid, you immediately probably think of those sort of, I guess, people who are cheating in sports, but those are typically referring to man-made or synthetic steroids. Our body also produces steroids. It's just a name for the molecule. So for example, cortisol is a steroid, that's sort of stress hormone. And cortisol is hydrophobic. So if it's hydrophobic, it can just squeeze and pass right through the plasma membrane. So it has receptors in the cytosol of the cell where it can bond to. Now, Hormone delivery, it happens via the bloodstream. So hormones are secreted into the blood like glands, travel to their target cell, and it can only bond to that specific cell. Okay, so only cells with the matching receptor can accept the messenger. So, for example, one hormone will be specific to a specific cell. It won't be able to target another cell because the receptor won't match. Now, just quickly touching on glands, we can define a gland as just a structure that's making and secreting a hormone. And endocrine glands, which are what we're concerned with in this video, are glands that release the hormone directly into the blood. Okay, so our glands are secreting our hormones and they're doing that directly into the bloodstream. So this picture is just to give you an idea of some of the glands we have in the body and where they're located. And these are the glands that are now going and secreting hormones into the bloodstream. So if we focus here on the adrenal gland, we were talking about that hormone adrenaline before. So this is the adrenal medulla up here on top of the kidney. And that hormone, that's where adrenaline is produced, and it's secreted into the bloodstream from the kidney. Okay, so we also have something called a hormone cascade. And I know that this document or this flowchart here on the right looks like it's kind of confusing and complicated. But I'm putting it there as more of a demonstration. So you probably don't need to know every single hormone cascade that happens. More just the general concept is what I'm going to talk about. So the hypothalamus, which is in your brain, this is kind of like, you could call it like the master switch. So this releases hormones to your pituitary gland, and we call the pituitary gland the master gland, and because this is the gland that uses hormones to actually signal other glands to make more hormones, and then those glands release hormones that will target specific tissues. So an example of that might be here the hypothalamus might release a hormone to the anterior pituitary. Let's look at follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH. So the hypothalamus should release something called, I think it's FRH, follicle releasing hormone. And the anterior pituitary would then go ahead and release follicle stimulating hormone, and that would target the cells of the testes. And then the cells of the testes would release, which they're their own gland, they would release testosterone, and then testosterone would go down and target the reproductive organs and have whatever functions. So we'll look at one in a little bit more detail. So here we have, I guess, the pathway of thyroid hormone. Now, thyroid hormone, it's an important hormone. It controls your heart, it controls your muscles, it controls your digestive functions, your metabolism, lots of your liver, a lot of your general body functions. And if we have issues with our thyroid hormone, the end result could be obesity, and there's lots of other health concerns that you can explore in one of these lessons. Now, the hypothalamus releases TRH, so it's thyroid releasing hormone, which stimulates or bonds to the cells on the anterior pituitary gland. So this is the master switch, goes down, to the master gland. Then the anterior pituitary gland releases thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid gland to make thyroid hormone. Okay, so this would target the cells of the thyroid gland, and it would make either thyroid hormone 3 or thyroid hormone 4, and then those cells would go out and affect the cells of your liver or the cells or your general body cells, to tell them to achieve or to balance their functions in growth and development. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is just simply to say that this endocrine system, we've really been only looking at a human perspective. It does exist in lots of different animals. So here we've got a butterfly, going through its life cycle. So it starts as an egg and then travels onward to become a larvae. They molt, grows larger and larger, becomes a pupae, and then eventually it changes from the caterpillar into a butterfly. So obviously there's some pretty huge changes happening with a caterpillar and a butterfly being the same species. It's a very different body formation, so there's going to be a lot of different genes being expressed. And what researchers have found out is that there's this hormone ecdysone here, which starts the molt happening. So as the larva moves through these different stages, and it helps to start the genes being expressed that the caterpillar needs to actually change from a caterpillar into a butterfly. And then there's this other hormone, juvenile hormone, which acts to stop ecdysone. So this hormone will sort of increase and decrease as the caterpillar goes through these different life stages. So obviously when it's an adult, there's not going to be very much ecdysone, or there's going to be a lot of juvenile hormone limiting the action of ecdysone. But when we've got our caterpillar going through its molt, there's going to be higher levels of ecdysone. So these sort of hormone release is helping to move this caterpillar through its life stages. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. I know it's a lot of information, but you'll have some time to sort through it in the lessons.